Within days, Maple Ridge received official notice of procedural reforms. An architectural review committee was formed. Past fines were placed under review. Future enforcement actions required documented committee approval. The changes were not dramatic, but they restored something the neighborhood hadn't realized it had lost: trust. Linda remained HOA president, though her tone softened and her meetings became collaborative rather than directive. She and Daniel spoke privately once, emerging with a handshake that surprised those watching from a distance. On a clear Saturday morning, neighbors gathered for a long-postponed block party. Children rode bikes across driveways once marked by quiet tension. Conversations flowed easily, unburdened by whispered frustrations. Daniel replaced his porch light with the same simple fixture that had started it all. No notices appeared, the orange envelopes stopped. Maple Ridge felt different, not because rules disappeared, but because fairness had finally arrived, and the ID card that could have humiliated instead restored balance, reminding everyone that authority works best when guided by transparency and respect. And that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow. Daniel spent the next morning inside the county records office, surrounded by aging maps and digital archives that told a story very different from the polished neighborhood outside. Every document confirmed the ranch boundaries remained unchanged for 50 years, yet one filing, stamped only 3 months earlier, transferred access rights of the main road to a development trust linked to the new HOA. The timing tightened his chest. His father had still been alive then, weakened but stubborn, refusing to sell. The clerk lowered her voice and admitted the transfer request had been marked expedited. No objections were recorded. Daniel knew his father would never have signed willingly. The man had turned down million-dollar offers and once joked he would rather argue with the wind than surrender the land. Back at the ranch gate, he noticed fresh tire tracks leading beyond the fence line and utility trucks moving deeper into former pasture. Workers avoided eye contact. A security guard informed him the area was now restricted to residents of a neighborhood built on land that still carried his family name. That evening, Daniel unlocked his father's desk drawer and found a leather folder tucked beneath weathered tax receipts. Inside lay handwritten notes, survey sketches, and a single sentence circled twice: "They can't claim what they can't power." Daniel stared at the words, unsure whether they were a warning or a plan. Outside, the new neighborhood lights flickered on across the hills, and for the first time, he wondered if his father had anticipated this fight long before it began. Night settled over the valley, but Daniel remained at the kitchen table studying the folder's contents. Old utility easements, water rights diagrams, and electrical routing maps revealed something surprising. The ranch supplied critical infrastructure to the entire hillside. Decades earlier, Daniel's father had negotiated private easements allowing power conduits and water lines to cross the ranch in exchange for maintenance control. The agreements were obscure but legally binding, signed long before developers purchased neighboring parcels. Daniel stepped onto the porch and looked toward the glowing neighborhood lights. Beneath those streets ran lines maintained from a control junction hidden near the western ridge, a junction located squarely on Harper land. The next morning he hiked to the ridge and found the weathered control station exactly where the map indicated. It was old but functional, humming with steady authority. A faded metal plate listed his father as the registered maintenance holder. Daniel felt the weight of realization settle into clarity. The HOA had blocked his access road, claimed authority over adjacent land, and assumed control without acknowledging the infrastructure dependency they relied on every hour. They believed ownership was visible in fences and signs. His father had understood ownership lived beneath the surface. As wind moved through the grass, Daniel brushed dirt from the control panel and whispered a quiet promise: he would not act out of anger. But he would defend what was rightfully theirs, because the neighborhood above him had no idea how fragile its comfort truly was. Daniel requested a meeting with the HOA board and arrived at the clubhouse carrying copies of the easement agreements and infrastructure maps. The board members greeted him with practiced politeness and firm smiles that suggested the decision had already been made. The president, Claire Whitmore, explained the development had modernized the area and improved property values. She insisted the road closure was necessary for community safety and confirmed the land beyond the gate now fell under association management guidelines. Daniel slid the documents across the table. Silence replaced confidence as the board reviewed the easement signatures and maintenance clauses granting the Harper Estate operational authority over the power and water junction servicing the entire subdivision. Claire regained composure quickly, suggesting the agreements were outdated and likely superseded by development approvals. She promised legal review and advised Daniel to respect the gate restrictions. In the meantime, outside the clubhouse, residents watched from shaded patios, their curiosity thinly veiled. Daniel sensed the narrative had already been shaped: progress versus a stubborn rancher clinging to the past. But the humming junction at the ridge told another story. That evening, service trucks arrived to install additional lighting along the closed road, reinforcing the barrier between Daniel and his land. The message was unmistakable: they believed pressure would force compliance. Standing at the locked gate under new floodlights, Daniel realized the neighborhood's certainty came from a simple assumption that he had no leverage. Tomorrow, he intended to prove otherwise. Before sunrise, Daniel returned to the ridge carrying a thermos of coffee and a calm determination that surprised even him. He inspected the control station carefully, documenting its condition and verifying the maintenance authority listed under his father's name remained active. He did not touch a single switch. Instead, he contacted the regional utility provider and scheduled an official infrastructure review, citing safety compliance responsibilities tied to the easement holder. The representative confirmed the appointment would require temporary service testing for system integrity. By mid-afternoon, utility vehicles entered the subdivision, escorted by county inspectors. Residents gathered on sidewalks, murmuring as technicians accessed service panels and junction boxes across the neighborhood. When testing began, lights flickered briefly. Air conditioning units paused, then resumed. Irrigation systems sputtered and reset. Nothing failed, but the interruption was enough to reveal dependence. Claire approached Daniel near the clubhouse steps, her confidence replaced by measured caution. She asked why he had initiated the inspection without HOA coordination. Daniel answered simply: the agreements required the maintenance holder to ensure system safety, and he intended to fulfill that duty. The inspectors later confirmed the junction station fell under the Harper easement and recommended formal coordination with the maintenance holder for future infrastructure planning. For the first time since the gates appeared, uncertainty spread through the neighborhood, and Daniel sensed the balance of power quietly shifting beneath their manicured streets. Within days, Claire requested mediation. The tone of her email was markedly different: respectful, procedural, and devoid of earlier certainty. The meeting took place in the county planning office, where maps and legal records replaced polished talking points. The mediator reviewed the easement documents, development permits, and road transfer filings. A discrepancy emerged: the access road closure had been approved conditionally, requiring coordination with the easement holder before enforcement. That coordination had never occurred. Claire's legal counsel acknowledged the oversight while emphasizing the association's intention to maintain safety and uniform development standards. Daniel listened quietly, resisting the urge to revisit months of frustration. The mediator proposed a resolution: restore shared access along the historic road, formally recognize the Harper Easement Authority, and establish a joint maintenance agreement ensuring infrastructure continuity for both parties. Outside, residents waited for news beneath trimmed trees and decorative street lamps powered through lines crossing Daniel's land. Their expressions reflected something new: not hostility, but concern. Claire signed the agreement first. Daniel followed, his hand steady. The gates would be removed within 48 hours. As he left the office, Daniel felt neither victory nor defeat, only the steady presence of his father's legacy standing where it always had. Yet one final revelation still waited, hidden in the mediator's closing remarks. 2 days later, the chains disappeared and the dirt road reopened beneath a clear blue sky. Residents watched as Daniel drove slowly along the path his father once traveled each morning, dust rising behind his tires like a quiet blessing. But the mediator's final note echoed in his thoughts. The ranch had been designated a protected agricultural heritage site years earlier, a status automatically preserving its infrastructure authority and preventing unilateral reassignment. The HOA had never discovered the designation, had the utility inspection not revealed the easement authority. The protection might have remained buried in state archives. His father had filed the designation without telling anyone. Ensuring the land could never be quietly absorbed by development expansion, Claire approached Daniel near the reopened gate and offered a sincere apology. She admitted the community had mistaken progress for entitlement and thanked him for choosing cooperation over retaliation. That evening, porch lights glowed across the hills while the ranch rested in familiar silence. The neighborhood continued functioning, but now with an understanding. Beneath every paved street and manicured lawn lay history that deserved respect. Daniel placed his father's leather folder back in the desk drawer, no longer searching for answers. The ranch had not needed revenge. It needed recognition, and in the end, the truth beneath the surface had protected everything his father built. and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.